Hello everybody, CW here. I want to do a quick little video on a die that was gifted to me yesterday that before my conversation with the gentleman, I didn't even know existed. Now, I am pretty new to the 357 SIG, which is what we're going to be talking about. I knew about this when it came out, of course, the yada, yada, yada. At the time, I was carrying a revolver. I was more involved with revolvers, and I was actually carrying a Ruger Speed 6 and 357 Magnum at the time. And I had customized it a little bit and made it my own, and I really liked it. And I looked kind of down my nose at the 357 SIG because it didn't do anything that I didn't already do, and it was designed to duplicate the ballistics that I already had. I wasn't carrying an auto. I really saw no use for it, and I just dismissed it. Fast forward about 20 years, I bought a used Glock 27, and it had a silver barrel in it, and I didn't really give it a second thought. The price was right, and the situation was such that I just didn't really even question it. The gun had come in used to a local shop, and the guy just wanted to turn it over quick. He knew I was thinking of one, and called me up and said, "Here you go. I'm not even going to put it in the shelf. You want it? You know, it's yours. Here's the price." And I said, "Yeah." So I ran over, picked it up, did the paperwork, went home. We had went on vacation, and I took it out, brought it with me, took it out to shoot it, and it wouldn't chamber a 40. I literally didn't even look at it. He didn't look at it beyond, it's a Glock 27. And it didn't have the original barrel with it. And I remember looking at the barrel and seeing that it looked odd, but I never looked at the muzzle. I never, you don't chamber rounds in it at the gun store or nothing. So there's not a marking on the barrel. Nothing's for who made it or nothing at all. I figured out that it was 357 SIG, and that was my first experience with 357 SIG. And I since picked up a 40 barrel for it, and I kept the 357 SIG barrel for it. And then I picked up a used 357 SIG barrel for a Glock 23, and I was really impressed with the ballistics, impressed with the accuracy, reliability. It's a dynamite caliber in a semi-auto. So I picked up some dies and I started looking into reloading for it, and I quickly learned that it's a different critter. Being a bottleneck cartridge, in case you haven't seen it, I'll show you some dummies here. Being a bottlenecked cartridge, it isn't available with carbide dies. So, and being bottleneck, there was a lot of question about headspace. Depending on who you talk to and whose dies you buy, it's designed to be headspaced off the case mouth, or it's designed to be headspaced off the shoulder. And it really makes a big difference. My first reloads wouldn't chamber in that Glock 27 barrel. And I got to looking at it, and I bought a cheap case gauge. This one happens to be made by Shooter's Box. And it's got nice provisions on it, and it does check overall length, which is something nice with case gauges. Not all of them do, and I'll show you that in a minute. But you see what we got here? That actually fails. That's why it's a dummy. It actually fails. Its shoulder is pushed way back. And You can't check case overall length with this tool. You can only check cartridge overall length. But what happens is this creates an accuracy issue, creates a headspace issue. If the case isn't the right length, so your shoulder is way back, so your cartridge is running right off the case mouth, which some will say that it's correct and that's how it's supposed to work. But with the shoulder pushed back, you'll find that your accuracy is going to be horrid. So I'm a firm believer that this cartridge should be headspaced off the shoulder. Overall length is important, but it's going to headspace off the shoulder. And that's the way I treat all my loads. So part of the gift I got yesterday, and it was from John's Hand Loading. Thanks a lot, John. We've met a couple of times. He lives right here in the same state with me. And we've gotten together a couple times. And I enjoy his company. He's a really nice guy. And he brought me down a die for the 327 SIG and one of these. He had a friend that had a bunch of stuff that wasn't using anymore or didn't need anymore, or I don't exactly know the situation, and we're not going to talk past that, but he had these, didn't need them, had no use for it, so he brought it down to me. And here's the die he brought. It's a Dillon die, and let's just back up a second. I want to continue talking about this case real quick. So here is that case that failed with the checker over here. He brought me this checker. This checker is made by L.E. Wilson, and a checker I call them all checkers, but it's a case gauge. And this, I'm gonna put more reliability in this one than I am this one. L.E. Wilson makes super quality stuff that is really second to none. So I'm gonna trust this one over this one. But in the case of what we just spoke about, they're pretty much the same. They're both showing that this case drops in past proper headspace. So the shoulder, it's checking it off the shoulder, not the case mouth. That's how you chamber a gun when it's got a shoulder. You know, it chambers off the shoulder. So you drop this in, it's the same thing. It's the shoulders move back, but when you hold it and tip it over, you can see that this overall length of the case is also long. But is it really long? Or is it long because the shoulder is moved? Okay, you follow me? The overall length of the case shows long because the shoulder is pushed back, allowing the case to fall in more. So if the case didn't go in all the way, how can I show that? If the case didn't go in all the way, so it was flush like that, all of a sudden, it's no longer too long. This case is actually still long, but only by a couple of thousandths. Before, it's long by a lot. It's unsafe long. Again, because of the shoulder. So I like to do mine based off the shoulder. So let's put these in the press here, and let's set up this die really quick, and let's see what we get. So I'm going to assume that you guys know how to set up a die for first time use, or I'm not going to assume, I'm going to show you how to set up a die for first time use. And that is to run it all the way down, run your ram all the way up, and run it down until it touches. And then give it just a little bit more, so you have just a little bit of cam over. I'd call that too much. All right, that's pretty good. Okay, we're going to call that pretty good. So I've got some cases over here. These are fired cases. And let me back up just a quick second. This is the new die that I was just given, and this is the die I didn't know existed. It is a carbide die made for 57 Sig. Now, those of you who know how and why carbide dies are used and how they're allowed, how they work, they only work for straight wall cases. If you've got bottleneck or if you've got a severe taper, you don't really get efficient use of a carbide die. You don't really get them. Now, you smart guys out there are going to say, hey, I got carbide 9mm dies. And you're right, you do. And the 9mm is quite a tapered case. It's not a straight wall. And you also know, or you should know, that a lot of people have problems with their 9mm when they load them on carbide dies, because the carbide die, it's a carbide ring inside the die, inside the mouth of the die here. I don't want to take that back out, but I'll show you in a second. And it doesn't quite size all the way down the case. So when it doesn't size all the way down the case, it leaves a base of the case swelled. So if you had a really stiff load, let's say it was a plus P or a plus P plus, or it was just a hot hand load, you may not size all the way down the case. So that case may not go all the way in your chamber. And that was caused by, well, number one, a high pressure load, but number two, a carbide die sizing a tapered case, which shouldn't be the case, shouldn't be allowed, shouldn't be done, because it doesn't work. So a lot of people have this question, have this problem, and one of the first things guys who know about this would tell them is, do you have any steel 9mm dies? Run it through a steel full-length 9mm sizer die, or you could cheat and just run it through that die. And what it'll do, it is a cheat is what I should say. What it'll do is it'll size down the case farther and eliminate your problem. The 40 Smith & Wesson is not really what this is based on, because the case is a little bit longer than the 40, but a lot of people say that it's based on the 40 because it's a small primer, where the 10mm is a large primer most of the time. And now there is small primers in almost every caliber because of the primer shortages and the primer problems, and it just got easier for people to make all one size primers. So people call this a 40 case, but if you took a 40 case and ran it in here, you would get a short-necked cartridge, which would also be a problem with some people's thinking on how this cartridge headspaces. Headspaces off the case mouth, and you make it from a 40 Smith & Wesson case, you're going to have a short neck or a shorter overall case, and you're going to have a headspace problem. If you headspace off the shoulder, that problem goes away. So this is a carbide die in 57 Sig, which is really neat. Again, I didn't even know it existed before conversation and before seeing it here. It works because it doesn't work because it doesn't size the neck of the case. But because it's such a short neck, they're probably just using a carbide ring to size down the body of the case and just letting this short little piece be sized with steel. And it works and doesn't jam up because it's such a short, small piece. And the rest of this is sized with the carbide ring that's in the base of this die. And it just doesn't stick. So let's run this up in there with our setup, and let's see what we get. You saw how easy it came out. It went in harder than it came out. So let's get this old case checker, the full length one that checks overall length, and drop it in. And you will see that it's just a little bit push the shoulder back. So all we did was just a slight cam over, and it's actually moved the shoulder back too far. So let's set that case over here. Set this case over here. We'll get another case. We're going to back this die out just a little bit. We'll get another case. So what we did was we lifted the die up out of the press. So we're not going to size down as far. We're not going to push the shoulder back as far. Try it again. Okay, there's our sized case. This checker. Now we've got it dead flush. So let's check it in our L.E. Wilson case gauge. So now we've got it dead flush. Virtually dead flush. Yeah. And I'm just checking it with a straight edge and making sure that that case is dead flush. And it is. It's perfect dead flush. So if I lift it at all, I'm hoping that you can see that. Hoping that you can see that there. Okay, I'm pushing it up, down, and it's dead flush. So that's a perfectly sized case to headspace off the shoulder. Now, this uses a Dillon, it's a Dillon die. Let's pull it out of here because I don't want to use that lock nut. I don't like their lock nuts for when I'm not having it in the Dillon press. These are really nice in the Dillon press because they're really small and they don't crash into each other. The Dillon, the 550 is what I'm talking about. The 550 heads, let me grab one here, are close together with the holes. So if you get a big nut, when you put these in here, a big nut sticks farther over and they crash into each other when they tighten and it doesn't work. So they need to have small nuts that fit the die bodies. But that's not the case here. We got plenty of room and there's also no stop on here. There's no lock. So you take this off, you're going to lose your setting. And it's good to really check your setting every time, but it's nice to have it where it holds your setting with the lock ring of the die nut. So now we know we want to back off of a slight cam over so we don't move that shoulder back. So we're going to do the same exact thing. We're going to hold this. We're going to bring this down till it touches. Bring this down till it touches. And then we're going to back this off just a little bit. Now we're going to back the whole thing off. We're going to tighten our set screw just enough so that it doesn't move. We're going to tighten this down. And I like to tighten my dies with a wrench just a little bit. Just a little bit. So it doesn't move and doesn't change. Okay, so this was a case that we did we know is good. Let's just set that aside. Let's get another case. Brand new case, fired case that has not been sized yet. Run it up in the die again. Get our case gauge and check it. Okay. So we backed that off too much. Now we've got a case that's proud of the gauge. And you see me moving my... So I'm holding it flush against the case and you can see how it's proud of the checker. So now we have not pushed the shoulder back far enough. So let's put it back in here. Let's take this off. Now if we hadn't snugged that up with the tool, we may not have gotten that. And this is the way we're going to use the die, so this is the way we're going to set it up. So back this off. Back this off so that I can adjust it. Now we need to go in a little bit more. So we're just going to go in just a little bit more. And we're going to re-tighten down the... You don't got to put the death grip on that. Just snug it down so it doesn't move. Put your tool back on here. And just snug that. Let's resize this case again. Drop it back in the case checker. See what we get. Okay, we're still proud. We're still proud. So we'll do it again. The tool out, we'll back this off. Loosen this up. Holding everything so it doesn't move. Give it another, 1/16 of a turn. Tighten this all back up. Tighten it back down. Snug it back down. Resize the case. Check it in the checker. All right, now we're getting there. I still think we're just a tiny bit proud, but let's see. Yes, we are a tiny bit proud. I don't know if I can make you see this or let you see this, but it's proud. Just a little bit. So let's move it one more time. And this time I think we'll have it set. And then with the lock ring now, we don't ever have to do this again. As long as we stay in this press with this shell holder. You change anything, it changes everything. Just a little bit more. Lock this back down. That locks it to the die. Lock it back down there. Same case, because we keep pushing that shoulder back just the tiniest little bit. Put it back in the checker. Yeah, we're perfect now. Yeah, we are perfect now. And again, all I'm using is this as a straight edge. I know it's straight. Use something that you know is straight that can go all the way across. And you will see, if you're not flush, you'll have rocking going on here. And I've got nothing. It's dead flat. Okay, so there we go. This is now set. Now we're set to resize cases with our new carbide die. And let me show you the inside of that die, where I said I would come back and show you the carbide ring. It's in here. No more worries of this changing. It's now going to be that way for however long we need it to be that way, or until we change it. So here's the inside case mouth. And you can see that ring that's in there. That is the carbide ring that allows you to not need lubrication. That's not to say that you can't or that you shouldn't. You just don't need to. But you want to make sure your cases are clean. You know, nice clean cases, because you're going to introduce grit into there, and it will. Carbide's tough, but you can scratch it. So you can harm your dies by running dirty cases. And the Dillon dies are pretty neat. You saw this push that little stem up because I was actually into the base of the case with the bottom of that. It's not a, well, actually it probably is an expander ball for this, because it's a bottleneck case. So it'll pop that up just a little bit. I'll show you that here. Really quick. That's how the Dillon dies work. They're really nice dies. They're kind of expensive, but they're really nice dies. So let me reposition you a little bit. And let's zoom you in here on the top of that die. Now all I'm going to do is push this up. See it? See it pop up? Down? Well, there is an expander ball in there running off the inside of that case. And there we go. That's how I set up a resizing die, and how I set up my new 357 SIG die. Again, John's Hand Loading donated this to us, and I really appreciate it. I like the 357 SIG, and I've now got three guns chambered for it, so I have a good use for this die, and it will be put to good use. I hope you appreciated it. I hope you learned something. Have any questions, leave them down in the description. Happy to answer any questions. God bless everybody. CW out.